Good morning, Alan Skinner here, and my topic is Bishop Charles Brent and the American Expeditionary Force. When the United States entered the First World War in April of 1917, there was a need to grow from a minuscule 200,000 man pre war army to about 4 million by the end of the war. Along with that, there's obviously a need to address the spiritual and moral needs of the soldiers, and central to that is the Army chaplain. Now, the chaplains in the Army at that point in time had kind of an odd existence. They were not an officially authorized branch, although each individual commander was authorized to appoint his own chaplain. So, as a consequence, you have different standards of fitness, ecclesiastical endorsements, level of education, and also the type of duties that each chaplain performed varied according to the whims of the commander. So, fast forward to 1917, and with the expansion of the Army, this structure is not really going to work really well. So, central to the rest of the story is Bishop Charles Brent. Fascinating character. He's an Episcopal priest, Canadian born, and he immigrates to the United States in the late 1800s, where he does several years of ministry, ministers in both New York and in Boston, and really develops a progressive approach towards ministry. In 1901, Brent is appointed the Bishop of the Philippines, and this is where he really comes into his own as as a model of ecumenism and also progressive ministry. Social justice ministry to the local Filipinos. He has some very innovative ministry approaches towards the American expats. And what I think is fascinating is he charges his Episcopal bishops with not proselytizing among the Catholic Filipinos. He likens it to sheep stealing. So he had a very interesting focus. Now, what's important to the story here is he first develops a relationship with then Captain John J. Pershing. Very, very deep relationship. Pershing later loses his family in a fire, and Bishop Brent is there to minister to him during this dark period of life. So, fast forward to 1917, and Bishop Brent is taken, he's left the Philippines, new bishop appointment in New York, but he's had taken a temporary posting with the Young Men's Christian Association, or the YMCA, in Europe. So in the course of his tours, he gets a chance to reconnect with then General John J. Pershing in France. Pershing has a problem. He's now growing an army that will eventually become 2 million men, and he needs help in organizing the chaplaincy. So what I think is fascinating is instead of turning to the regular army chaplains, he asks Bishop Brent. And, Brent's an outsider. He's not an ignorant man, but he just doesn't really, fully grasp the ways of the army. And so he agrees reluctantly. It takes some time for him to get to that point, and he's eventually appointed as a major in the Adjutant General Corps, not as a chaplain, so another interesting aspect. And so he brings his ecumenical approach to organizing the AEF. What he does is he brings in Francis Doherty, who's a Catholic chaplain priest, pre-war regular army, so you have that aspect, and then Paul D. Moody, Congregationalist National Guard chaplain and son of D.L. Moody. And then what he does is he takes a committee approach to organizing the AEF. It's difficult to overstate the importance of what he does. He essentially starts from scratch. There's no organization, there's no supervision, and so he takes this task on, and he does a pretty amazing job. So he takes his well-honed organizing and unitizing skills, fills chaplain vacancies and makes sure chaplains they are representative of the population they are ministering to, and critically, he cultivates a spirit of unity among the chaplains, And also you have the YMCA, the Jewish Welfare Board, these religious organizations in the battle space, and he brings them all together working towards a common goal. And he's praised by the chaplains for the most part. There's some friction there, and if you read my paper, you'll find more about it. So at the end of 11 November 1918, and the rapid demobilization undoes many of Brent's initiatives, at least in the short term. But in the long run, his initiatives bear fruit, as noted by David I. Goldman. While the first ever Army Chaplains Corps may have not been realized, Brent's chaplain office became a model for a more organized chaplaincy. After intense lobbying by Brent and other noted military and political leaders, Congress created the first ever Office of the Chief of Chaplains in 1920, a small but decisive step in the formation of what would eventually become the U.S. Army's Chaplain Corps. And thank you for your time. This concludes my presentation.